Welcome to episode 3 of the Stygion and Stanley podcast. I'm Danny Stygion.
JD.
And today we're going to talk about They Live and John Carpenter's Vampires. If you want to start it off with They Live.
Yeah. They Live it's almost become a documentary at this point, right? If you take the creatures as being the billionaire class, right? Like that's what they do. Obey, consume. I'm sure I've met people actually that have seen the logo, the obey, and then like the creatures' faces, but they have no idea what it's from.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. It's a really very stylized, really cool movie. But like I don't want to talk bad about John Carpenter because I love John Carpenter's movies, but they're so cheesy, right? Like
Yeah.
They were never not cheesy, and like the lines that are delivered and the fight scenes, they're all super bad, but that's kind of what makes it, kind of great.
The bubblegum line, that's one of his best lines. I love the cheese.
I feel like even the character that Roddy Piper played, right? I think he was basically the same character as Jack Burton, just with like less swagger. But it was really great. Like everything about it, when I rewatched it, I was like, oh shit, this is everything that's going on in the world right now. It's class warfare.
Yeah.
They even mentioned it in like their little screenings, and they're like, this is class warfare. They're trying to eliminate the middle class. And that's what's going on to this day. It's almost like RoboCop, right? You go and rewatch I saw RoboCop in the theater with my dad when I was a small kid. Pissed my mom off. But when you go back and watch it now, you're like, damn, this movie's like got serious political undertones to it. And it's kind of like a tongue-in-cheek commentary on the state of the police in this country. I guess back then and even now, and same thing with They Live. I think it's really a super like politically charged movie, but they just had to like shrink it down and wrap it in a kind of a campy,
I think it's interesting that Roddy Piper's character's name is Nada, which is nothing.
Yeah. John Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was for sure intentional. Like the characters are interesting. They spent so much time on that fight scene.
Yeah.
That took up so much of the movie, and it's such a small part. And even as a kid, I was thinking like, this is a really long fight scene for a movie. That the fight is not progressing the story at all.
Yeah.
They beat the shit out of each other. And that was it. Like kicking each other in the balls and like fucking beating each other's ribs in. Like it got crazy. And then they picked up 2x4s at some point.
I was keeping track of the time like with my watch, and I was like, I think this is like we're into it 5 minutes already. It's still going.
Oh, the fight, yeah. Like it was a crazy long fight, and I'm always curious if there's like director's cuts of some of these movies, or if John Carpenter has ever like talked about wanting to do director's cuts of the movies, because they seem like studio fuckfaces like to edit shit down and make it awful.
Yeah.
And I feel like they've done that with so many movies, and it sucks because they're artwork. Movies are for sure it's artwork, and I know if I created something and then some company was like, oh, we're going to take over from here and like repaint and redo everything that you just worked on, that would really piss me off. And it sucks with budget constraints and things like that, that they've got these parameters put on their ideas. I think now we get those TV shows, right, that are better quality than most of the movies we see.
Yeah.
Because you got these old fucking fathead fucks running the studios that are still trying to put out the same product. Oh, it's the same as it's always been, so we can't change anything. And they keep trying to like put out this cookie cutter bullshit. I think that's what has always ruined comic book movies in the past, not so much now, but in the past, and then video game movies for sure, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
they get their fucking grubby hands on those things and just fuck them up. And horror movies are the same. I feel like that movie was edited in a way where we lost so much context and so much like buildup. Like, I'm sure that when they were making They Live, no one that was making that movie or part of it thought, oh man, this is going to, win an Academy Award. This is going to be like a blockbuster film of all time. But I do feel like it probably should have been a longer movie. Like it felt like they cheaped it, right? Like,
Yeah.
trimmed it.
I wrote it down as a note. Like, I think it's only an hour and a half, but I was like, man, I wish it was longer. It could almost be like a TV series. There's so much there that they could expand upon.
Oh, They Live would be an awesome TV series, right? Like they could really, really drag that out 3 or 4 seasons at least, and and even the way they ended They Live was good, but I feel like it could have ended more like, I don't know, like the whole screen could have started flashing gray, and it could have been like, one of those alien creatures talking to people, but blinking back and forth between the black and white and the color as the movie ends.
Oh yeah,
like, that would have been super cool. It would have been
like subliminal messaging.
Yeah, like it wouldn't have been wrapped up with a nice little bow like the way it was. But I feel like most movies in the 80s did that. Like they had to have it wrapped up.
I like that it had like a bleak ending, but yeah, I mean, this is one of those movies I feel like I wish there was a sequel. I wonder if it did piss off some executives, because it's kind of like some of them were targeted. I feel like in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that a lot. Like, oh, was there a character in there that looked exactly like someone that ran the studio that we didn't know about?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's a good movie. I enjoy it. It's one of those movies where like it is bleak. The message is very bleak, but the movie is entertaining enough with all the silly one-liners. And I like when they just start blowing away the cops like in the middle of the street. I mean, they're the aliens, but people see them as cops, and they're just blowing them away. Like, obviously, any time I see cops getting killed, it always makes me laugh. So, but just the way that it all worked out, like in the middle of the city, and I laugh every time when Roddy Piper, who's like this pretty big dude compared to the rest of the actors, he just watches that blind preacher just get his ass fucking beat. He doesn't even try to help him.
Oh yeah.
Like, man.
Were you into like wrestling when you were a kid?
Oh yeah. I watched pro wrestling pretty extensively until like sometime around high school, and I just didn't lose interest in it. It just started doing other shit, drugs and alcohol.
Same here. I think when I was a kid, I was into it for like a couple of years, whatever. But I definitely remember Roddy Piper. I'm glad he was in this movie. He was actually in a decent amount of movies. It's like I don't remember him from this movie. It's like, man, he got like more gigs after this. Like, wow.
He was a character on a TV show called It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Okay.
That was his character was like a super exaggerated version of him as a wrestler.
Oh yeah.
This just a super alcoholic, degenerate, fucking weird guy who was a pro wrestler when the guys in the show decided they were going to put on pro wrestling matches. Um, yeah, and I mean, I don't know what went on with him and why he never stuck with it, but his
Yeah.
Canadian accent is really heavy in They Live. Every time he says that he's sorry, and I'm like, oh shit, I always forget that fucker's Canadian.
I really can't imagine anyone else, I guess, in this movie. It's like, even you search Roddy Piper actor, it's like, it's nothing but They Live stills.
Yeah. The only, like I was saying earlier, the only character I could imagine would be Jack Burton. You could put Jack Burton in They Live.
Yeah, I guess Kurt Russell.
And it's like, it's almost, almost hand in hand, like he could play that exact character. And same thing, you could take John Nada and take him out and put him in a movie with Jack Burton somewhere else. So
I think Keith David was pretty good in the movie, but the actress Meg Foster, she's got some crazy eyes, but she was, like, to me, she was really flat in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of, not to disparage, women, but a lot of the women they got to play, like the woman who needed to be saved, like in all the 80s movies, that's kind of what they seem to go for, right? Like, just a girl with blue eyes, and then they're like, oh, you're going to be this helpless woman who needs to be saved.
There's just
I've never acted before, and they're like, oh, it's fine.
Yeah, there's like no emotion, no reaction. I was like, geez. So you're being kidnapped, but like there's no reaction whatsoever.
Yeah, she was not very I don't know what else she did. I'm sure she did other movies, but
I recognize her face, but yeah, I don't remember what else she's been in.
Yeah, nothing of consequence for certain.
And the other movie we're going to talk about is Vampires. Did you get a chance to rewatch it?
Yeah. I saw that movie in theaters when it came out.
Yeah, same here.
It was and I don't remember how I felt about it back then. When I watched it now, I thought, man, they talk about erections so much in this movie. Like, there's some super, like I felt like at the end of the movie when they're walking away and the preacher and him are talking about getting erections, I was like, they should just have these guys fuck. That should be the final scene. These guys should be sucking each other off behind the church. Like, it was, and again, I guess it's just from the times, but like, it was almost obnoxious. Like, the character that James Woods played was annoying more than like endearing.
Yeah.
Because James Woods just plays an asshole really well. I don't know that he's an asshole in real life, but
yeah, I don't know if his character is meant to be, now I think about it, meant to be likable in this movie, or he's trying real hard to be like a badass. Like, I liked him in Videodrome, but man, I was trying real hard to think of a movie that he was the leading actor, because he's usually like the villain or the, I don't know if you want to call it, not character actor, but he's always a supporting actor.
Yeah, I mean, he is a character actor. He plays a good. One of the things I remember reading about vampires in a Fangoria magazine for sure was that I guess it's based on a book. I've never read the book. I hate vampire books, but was that there was a different director originally tied to it with Dolph Lundgren and Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, I read that too.
And I remember, I guess that they made another movie. I can't remember the name of it. They made a movie based on the original screenplay for Vampires with Dolph Lundgren. That guy, they went ahead on their own and they're like, oh, we're just going to rip off this screenplay that you guys told us you weren't going to use. Which is, I didn't get to see that movie because I can't remember the name of it, but I'm sure I can look it up and find it. And I remember seeing an interview with John Carpenter at one point. He was pissed off because they cut his budget by like 70%, right before production started.
So he had to change a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's the kind of shit that like why the fuck would you slash a budget by 70% right before the movie starts filming?
Yeah.
So, it's cool. I remember seeing that he talked about wanting to mix like a Western with a horror movie.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, essentially what he did. But man, how cool would it have been if they had been like actual Western, like right pre-industrial revolution, no cars, like wagons, horses, like same. You could have the exact same story, right? But like take it even further back in time. The only thing, I mean, he could have the crossbow. Everything is cool except pistols and rifles would be different. The brothel, like the whole scene with like the brothel, essentially, like that could have been really cool.
Oh yeah.
And
I love the first half of this movie, by the way. Like the opening and then the motel where the whole team gets massacred. And then after that it kind of like it never like gets back on the roller coaster for me. It's just going down.
Yeah, it's almost like they didn't want to do the movie anymore, right? Like the characters even changed. Like James Woods' character, the way he behaved was completely different in the second half of the movie than the first half. And the way they tried to work in that weird like vampire love story with the Baldwin guy.
Oh yeah.
That didn't seem necessary. Like there was no rapport with them. Like how did they fall in love? Like, oh, and he stripped her naked and like, backhanded her on the fucking bed. Like, where was the point where they actually?
I agree. Like, because his character is pretty like a hard ass, Daniel Baldwin.
Yeah.
This is the only movie I can remember him being in, and I thought he did okay. I read that they wrote it for Bruce Campbell, and for whatever reason, he didn't do it. And then Alec Baldwin, the good-looking Baldwin brother, turned it down and recommended his brother Daniel. Which I mean, I think he did all right. But you're right. Like, their love story doesn't make much sense.
You couldn't have Bruce Campbell and James Woods together. That wouldn't work. They need, honestly, like, I don't know. I don't think Alec Baldwin would have been good for that either. It's hard to like go back and say, oh, like this person would have worked or this person wouldn't. But I feel like James Woods was not a good choice for like the main guy. I would have liked James Woods better if he was one of the priests. He wouldn't have been able to curse as much, but I think it would have been funnier having him be a priest than just the role he played. It was difficult for me to
see him as like an action star.
Yeah, like that, and like the hard ass thing, because he'd flip flop back and forth, right? Like he was all gung ho one second, and then he was like,
he got softer towards the end of the movie.
Yeah, it just seemed weird. He didn't have enough. I think he just didn't have enough time to build like that character, right? Like we didn't know his backstory, and then when he finally told his backstory, it was like really forced. It was like a 30-minute cartoon where the villain has to explain why he's a villain. It just felt really silly. And then the vampire guy was pretty cool.
I was going to tell you, he was in Karate Kid 3. He looks like Michael Wincott, the guy from The Crow. Yeah. That played Top Dollar. Yeah.
He's in the Cobra Kai series too.
Yeah.
His character came back. You can tell he's the bad guy because he had his hair slicked back, right? That's how they do it in the 80s and 90s movies. Yeah, he was cool. Like the thing that bothered me with that was how powerful he was right at the beginning when he slaughtered their team.
Yeah.
Like that like fucking ripped the guy completely in half through bones and everything. But then like James Woods is kicking his ass in a fist fight later, like in a little skull. Like, come on. Like if you're gonna make him that powerful right at the beginning, you got to be consistent, right? Like he's got to always be that powerful, or it's weird. But it wasn't a bad movie. It just, again, it felt like should have been a way longer film. And I wonder even if it was intended to be like an actual Western before they started.
Yeah.
Right? Like if they got their budget cut so bad, they're not going to be able to use horses right? And like prop guns with the old like revolver style pistols, and on set like using locations, because some of the locations they used could have easily been like old western, right? Some of the churches, some of the stuff like that, like it. I believe that that's what the original intent was.
Has there
But
been like an actual Western vampire movie yet?
yeah, um, Death Riders in the House of the Vampire is
Okay.
Danzig's movie.
Oh, okay.
Came out a few years ago. I have not seen it because you can't really find it anywhere. Like, I haven't seen it, but and I think there's a few others. Nothing of consequence, and nothing
Yeah.
like high budget or even mid budget. Nothing with like good writing or good actors or things like that. But I've seen a few clips of the Death Riders in the House of the Vampire, and man, it looks cheesy.
If someone could pull it off, like a spaghetti Western type, but vampires, I think that'd be something I'd want to watch.
It would be really interesting. Um, for sure, it would be a good a good angle, right? Because then you don't have to do like the all the modern weapons and stuff that they use against vampires that don't work. Like they're shooting them with like submachine guns and shit.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. Okay, like the bullets don't hurt them.
Yeah,
Like what's the point of shooting them?
yeah. It seemed very odd, and like that's why I think that maybe it was supposed to be an actual western, right?
Yeah.
Because the guns didn't hurt them. They had to drag them out into the sun with a winch on the front of a jeep. One of the scenes that bothered me, even as when I first saw it, was the very first house they're pulling vampires out of. The the girl grabs like the door jamb or something, and he instantly slices her hand off, right, or shoots her hand off because he sees what she's doing. And then at the end of the movie, they use that same gag, only this time the vampire holds on, and James Woods is just looking at it like, "Oh, come on, pull it harder," and then it breaks the winch. And I'm like, they fucked up there because he already knew exactly what to do the first time. If he thought he could just pull harder, he wouldn't have shot her hand. It wasn't even that serious of a situation in the beginning. They were handling it easily. But then at the end, he's just looking at her and freaking out and yelling to pull harder while he's holding a weapon. And like it was very odd to me, like that they again, that's just someone who was doing editing or making cuts to the film.
Yeah.
But there was lots of things that kind of pulled me out of like suspending my disbelief in that movie. Again, probably needed a higher budget, and that's probably it, honestly. Having a little bit more of a budget and a little bit more creative freedom.
There's one thing with an actor in the movie that like when I saw him on screen as part of the squad, I was like, is that who I think it is? It's like, why doesn't he have any lines? And it's his name is Kerry Hiroyuki Tagawa. He was in Mortal Kombat and Rising Sun.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's like that can't be that guy because he's like he has nothing to do in this movie and he gets killed. And I read that that actor kept asking John Carpenter like more about his backstory and motivation, and he felt like he was just treated like as a glorified stunt man in the movie, and like man, that was definitely a waste because that actor's done quite a few things.
That happens to a lot of Asian actors in the past. Not so much now, but
Yeah.
Asian actors have always been treated kind of as, oh, like your little comic relief, Charlie Chan, do a couple of flips and then die kind of characters. So that's not surprising.
They could have casted someone, I guess, that was less what I felt like more. He was established at that time, in my opinion.
Yeah. There's actually a very odd the Japanese vampire movie. I think it's called Yakuza Apocalypse. And it's basically like the Yakuza has been infiltrated by vampires, but only the very high up people. And which is it's just kind of an interesting like twist to vampires and in a modern setting.
I think I've heard of that movie. I need to check it out.
It's not like the best movie you'll ever see, but it's entertaining enough to where you're not going to feel like I just fucking wasted an hour of my time watching this shit.
I did see a terrible Yakuza movie last year. I think it was on Netflix. It had Jared Leto in it. It was set in Japan, and he was part of the. Yeah, it was one of the worst movies I've seen. But I was interested in it because I'll at least watch it because I'm interested in the Yakuza and the Japan.
Yeah.
But no. I should have known better once I saw he was in the movie.
Yeah, that's adding a white character to a film that doesn't need a white lead.
Which seems to happen quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Like
that one movie with Matt Damon, The Great Wall or whatever it was called.
My God. Yeah, like I mean it's silly. It's a thing that's happened forever.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but there's plenty of Asian, cinema that people just don't know about. Yeah. I'd say I probably watch about 80% Chinese and Japanese movies. Some Korean movies in there too.
Yeah.
I do not watch them in English. I don't want to hear the English. I hate the translations and the voice acting when they dub movies into English. But I mean, I've been watching those since I was, really small, watching them with my grandma. Some stuff that was probably incredibly violent that I probably shouldn't have been watching as a kid, but
yeah. Korean cinema has gotten really good.
One of my favorite movies a few years ago was a movie called The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. It's kind of like a steampunk heist western, but it's Korean. Really funny. There's some really, really like genuinely funny parts, and it's just gun fu, like just so many shots being fired, just nonstop gunfights, but with kind of a silly element to it almost. It was really, really entertaining though. It's really funny and it's like an action comedy.
And
but go ahead.
Train to Busan, that's a Korean film, right?
Yeah.
South Korea, yeah. Brittany loves that movie.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one also. Back to I guess John Carpenter's Vampire. I'm always curious, like if they remake all these movies, some of them really shitty. And I always wonder, like, some of these movies that they've redone over and over and over and over that are just not very good. They're not like ever going to create a bunch of money. I wonder sometimes why they don't like reboot that kind of story, or let John Carpenter do it. Right? I'm sure he would have loved. I don't know if John Carpenter's still alive. I think he is.
Yeah, he's still alive. He's like mainly making music.
Yeah. I don't know if that's something that would interest him, but I imagine like if a studio was like, hey, we're going to give you a They Live series, basically 6 episodes, 6-hour-long episodes to tell your story, like a remake of They Live, but with 6 hours to fill. I feel like he could really fucking nail that, right? Like he could really make it cool. And I feel like that's where a lot of stuff is kind of headed anyway, the really good storytelling. I mean, you can't tell me that the Daredevil season 1, even just season 1 of Daredevil,
that's amazing.
Could ever have been squished down to an hour and a half.
No.
Right. And obviously the Daredevil movie they did with
Ben Affleck.
Yeah. Fuck that. But yeah, I wonder sometimes like why they don't try to do that. Like even if John Carpenter didn't want to direct, if he doesn't have the the energy left to direct, he could easily come on as production manager or an assistant to kind of help out and direct something longer. I think that's what Tim Burton did with the Wednesday show. I don't know if he directed all season, but
I don't know.
And he was there for part of it, and like that was a pretty cool show. I guess it was, for aimed more for like younger audiences, but you couldn't tell that story in like an hour.
Yeah.
That's where I think same thing. John Carpenter's vampires, like I guess I just call it vampires, but like that would have been so cool. It's like 6-10 episodes. But a Western where they're hunting vampires, and they could still do that because there was like a syndicate in the movie, right? Like a history of vampire hunting, like through the church.
Yeah.
So they could easily go back and tell
some backstory there. Yeah.
Yeah, like and fill it in. But yeah, I mean, for it to be funded by the Catholic Church, they didn't have very cool weapons or armor. Like, the Catholic Church just prints money basically. So if it had a bigger budget, I'm sure there was more grandiose plans for that.
They could have done more. He only made, I think, 3 or 4 movies after this. Ghost of Mars, which is terrible. The movie with Ice Cube and Mars, and The Ward with Amber Heard, which I have a DVD copy of it, but I've never seen it. I heard it's terrible. But the one movie after vampires that I thought was decent was Cigarette Burns from the Masters of Horror series.
Oh yeah.
I think he made one more for that series, but I don't know if I've watched it yet. He might have directed one.
Yeah.
You've seen Cigarette Burns?
Oh yeah. I love that movie. And all the stuff that he's done, I really like it. But I again, budget, time, editing, like I feel like he got, muzzled, so to speak, on a lot of his movies and didn't get to like really do it. I know that Big Trouble in Little China, for example, was supposed to have sequels. Like Jack Burton was supposed to be like a character in several different movies. And man, what a missed opportunity there, right?
That would have been great. Yeah.
For a Big Trouble series, like Big Trouble, Little China, you could do Big Trouble here. Like, man, they could have really, really done well.
If I had to think about it, I feel like the movie that he probably maybe, I could be wrong, that he had the most control of, which I think is like he got to do what he wanted to do, which is The Thing. Like I think that's like a near perfect horror movie.
Oh yeah. They did a game version of that back on like PlayStation 2 era. That was really well done. Like it was basically just like an interactive version of the movie.
Wow.
Which was really cool to like, be able to explore around that area more and just kind of little more immersion into it. I looked at it recently and like the PS2, the graphics are like, oh man,
yeah.
Why did I think this was cool? But yeah, that's a great movie. I think it's probably like one of the top horror films of all time, right? Like it's got to be
for sure.
Body Bags is another one that I really liked. I used to have a VHS copy of Body Bags that I watched so many times as a kid that I wore it out. But those are the kind of, I love anthology horror films. If there's an anthology horror, I'm going to watch it. I don't give a shit what kind of budget it has.
Yeah, there's some really good ones. Trick or Treat and I think Tales of Halloween.
Yeah, Tales of Halloween is good. There's also a Christmas Horror Story.
I think there's one called Bad Candy or something like that. Halloween one. I think that's the name of it. You know what I'm talking about? And it has the guy from Slipknot in it. I thought that one was okay.
Oh, I didn't know anyone from Slipknot's in it. Yeah, A Christmas Horror Story is really good. It's got William Shatner in it.
Hmm.
But he's the radio host, and he's like just talking on the radio the whole time through all the different things. It's cool. But yeah, I think John Carpenter was really good at that, right? Like I feel like he was definitely a fan of like the um Twilight Zone for sure, right? He
Oh
had to
yeah.
be. Um and the stuff, some of his stuff that was on like Masters of Horror and the shorter things, like everything he's done, I think is really good. One of the, you mentioned the music that he's doing now earlier. The guitar riff that starts playing at the end of John Carpenter's Vampires, and I think somewhere in the middle of it also, is the exact guitar riff from Dark Knight, the song by the Blasters that's used in From Dusk Till Dawn.
I was thinking it, yeah, like the guitar music in Vampires is like this kind of reminds me of like Desperado. I don't know, it's like something like that. So
Yeah,
maybe
like
maybe that was it.
so I was curious. I was like, man, and I kept listening to him over and over, and like when you listen to that song, "The Dark Knight" by the Blasters, like it's a lot of like a cappella at first, and then it goes when the guitar actually starts though, like it's the same riff that he played, and I thought
Yeah.
that's pretty funny. I know he does all the scores on his movies, but I feel like he for sure like was into that. And I think From Dusk Till Dawn came out like a year or two later.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they were like, oh, they had a bigger budget, so they actually paid for the license to use that song instead of having just the
The,
guitar.
the music doesn't sound like some of his older scores, like the 80s synth style. It definitely sounds, I guess, more modern or for this movie. I don't know what you would call that style, but I heard a lot of guitar, like strings.
That's what made me think again. I think it was supposed to be like an actual Western.
Yeah.
Um, and like even some of the clothes and like everything, I feel like that's where it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be an actual Western horror, which I think would have been super cool.
That's definitely one of the things that like I admire, respect the most about John Carpenter is he started making music for his movies because in the beginning he didn't have the budget to hire composers, so he just learned how to do it himself and then got really good at it. And I don't know if he realizes how many people he's like inspired, like at least the synth music community. I mean, there's
Oh yeah,
documentaries, yeah,
yeah, for sure. And some of his stuff is, I mean, it's iconic, right? Like the music that he's made for different horror, genres. It's sampled and imitated and everything else. I don't know that there's a lot of people that have the two, the dual skills, right?
yeah,
He's like dual wielding. He's like a legit musician and he's also like a legit director. So
yeah. I don't know many. I'd have to really think about it to think of another director who makes his own music too.
better start taking those guitar lessons, buddy.
I've actually I've asked a couple of my friends who make electronic music, like, hey, show me how to do what John Carpenter does. It's probably gonna take a long time to learn if I ever get it. But
Yeah. But it's good to like, I guess, at least know, right? Because even if
yeah,
he had someone else, if John Carpenter had someone else do it, or if you have someone else make the music, if you knew enough about it to like go, no, I don't like that.
yeah,
Do it this way, because you don't go to the auto shop and tell them, hey, no, don't fix my car that way, right? Because like you're like, I don't know what the fuck you guys are doing. So
I
that's how I
work.
feel with like people who do drones, who can fly drones. Man, there's some highly skilled drone pilots, and I'm like, yeah, I can fly mine all the way around the living room without crashing.
There's a I work with some people who help me do music for the my films, but like sometimes like I'm working on something real short, and I was like, I wish I knew how to just make it myself, so like that way I don't have to bother people.
That's my problem. Like I'm like working on some art project, and I'm like, oh man, if only I knew how to airbrush. So then I go off on this tangent, and I'm like, oh, okay. Now I've got thousands of dollars worth of airbrush equipment.
Oh yeah.
I can airbrush well enough to do what I want to do. And then I'm like, what was I working on again?
Oh yeah.
Like, oh, yeah. I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like it was so much work to get to that point, and then like I learned when I was making the Raziel statues, I got to airbrush. The paint I can't get the same quality as I could with an airbrush. So I went on this tangent, learned to airbrush, and then like, oh cool, now I know how to do that. And then I'm so far gone from that original project that I don't know what the fuck to do with it. It's just like gathering these obnoxious skills.
Is there any other Carpenter movies that come to mind that you like?
The first John Carpenter movie I ever saw, I think, was Body Bags. Like I remember watching that when I was maybe 11 or 12, and it was one of those like, you know, the trips to Blockbuster on a Friday. You're all excited, right? Like Uncle's taking you to Blockbuster. You're gonna get, you know, some kind of bullshit chips and things. You got a friend coming over, maybe spending the night, and you get to pick out two movies, but all the high dollar, high budget stuff is gone. So you're left like the B movie horror, because whatever is new in actual horror films is already checked out on Friday. And it was one of those, like, that was like, oh, let's get this one. It's Body Bags, right? And like I just, obviously it probably scared the shit out of me the first time I watched it, but
those are the best ones, though. The B movie horror that gets picked over.
one of the movies that I watched from renting it like from a Blockbuster at some point that I remember being really fucking scary, and then I rewatched it. I'm like, that's so embarrassing. Was a movie called Boneyard, and it was kind of a ridiculous film, very 80s practical effects, super over the top gore, slime, melting shit. But one of the creatures was this lady's dog, as a poodle, and it ended up like eating some of the stuff that made it turn into one of these things, and it was like this giant monster poodle puppet. It was so fucking silly.
Oh wow. That was in Body Bags?
No. It was around. I might have been the same time when I watched both of those, but it was right around that time period. It's just one of those things I remember being scared, like when I was a kid, like, oh shit. And half the time, like, I would end up watching these movies by myself, and I probably shouldn't have been, like, just sitting in the dark in an empty apartment, you know, watching these movies, and like scared the shit out of me. And then I'm walking around the apartment turning on all the fucking lights because like, oh, I'm gonna die now.
There's definitely movies that like I saw as a kid that like scared me, but like as an adult when I watch them, like that's it. Like, you know, like Cujo or Children of the Corn and Poltergeist for sure. It's like I remember those movies freaked me out, but like Poltergeist is still pretty good, but the other ones I'm like,
Poltergeist, I remember very specifically the scene where he's eating chicken. Yeah. One of the paranormal guys. That fucking scene ruined my life for so long because
ripping his face.
Man, go into the bathroom at night and like trying not to look at the mirror. I'm like, nope. I'm just gonna walk right over here, and like terrified that if I make eye contact with the mirror, I'm gonna rip my own face off.
Yeah.
And one of the funny things about that, when I went to rewatch it, is how small the chicken leg is.
Oh yeah.
It looks like the size of a chicken wing by today's standards. I'm like, oh man, as pre-hormones and all that other shit they pump into chickens, the growth hormones to make them become giant.
I don't know which year the Poltergeist came out. I must have been like 5 or 6, but my parents, they used to take me to all the R-rated horror movies.
Nice.
Aliens. I definitely remember seeing that in the theater.
Yeah. Did John Carpenter direct Christine?
Yes.
Okay, I thought he did. I really liked that movie. I did a book report on Christine when I was like in 3rd or 4th grade, and my teacher was like, she didn't think I watched or read the book. First of all, she was like, "Did you actually read this?" But that movie was actually good. I think that was probably the first movie I saw after I read a book. And I was like, "Oh, this is fucking cool," because like you read the book and you get all these ideas of what everything looks like.
I think Stephen King wrote that one, right?
Yeah, that is a Stephen King book for certain. I think it's kind of cool when like you have two horror kind of icons, I guess, work together.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be real careful, right? Like, oh man, I don't want to like fuck up his book and like write it all stupid.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I think my favorite John Carpenter movie obviously is Big Trouble in Little China, but I guess for his horror stuff, you got to go like either Halloween or The Thing, right?
Have you seen In the Mouth of Madness? I don't think that's his best, but it's like a guilty pleasure.
I don't know. I probably have at some point.
It's the one with.
Go ahead.
It's the one with Sam Neill. He's like a Stephen King like writer, and then all his fans like stalking him. I think, but it's very Lovecraftian.
Yeah, I for sure have seen that. Yeah. I went for a few years. Like I started watching anything I could on that was John Carpenter. Yeah. Right around the time where I originally learned how to torrent movies. So early 2000s ish. Shout out to Justin. I won't say his last name.
Torrent? What's that? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly. It's just this website where you can download movies that Justin told me about when I was looking for obscure shit. He was like, "Oh, it was at work one night." I was like, "Man, I really wish I could see that. I can't even remember what it was." Oh, it's Cannibal Holocaust. I was like, I haven't seen Cannibal Holocaust, and the fucking VHS tape I had like fucked up. So like I haven't seen that movie in forever. Not a good film, but
I've actually never gotten around to watching it. It's just like it's one of those movies on my list. Like I know I got to watch it someday. Everyone always talks about it, and I've seen it in clips and documentaries, but it just doesn't sound appealing.
It's not. It's awful.
I've seen the Green Inferno, Eli Roth movie, so I'm like, oh, it's got to be close to this. And this movie's
yeah, it's. I fell asleep during Green Inferno, but yeah, it was one of those things like it lived on its hype.
Yeah,
it lives purely off of a hype from people who have never seen it. They're like, oh, that movie's banned. That movie, this, that movie, that. The director went to jail for animal cruelty. None of the things people say about it is true. You can go to jail for animal cruelty. You can get charged with animal cruelty, but the movie itself, not great. It was like Faces of Death.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things that was people like, oh, this movie's been banned. It's rated X. But yeah, that's how I learned to torrent movies, because within 30 minutes, Justin's like, here, and he gives me this little flash drive. Here's that movie you were looking for. So
the Justin that we both know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I hope he's doing well. I haven't talked to him in a long time.
I messaged him out of the blue. I was like looking through old contacts, and I was like, oh shit. And I just sent him a message, and he sent back and seemed shocked. I think he still works for that company.
Mm.
Or maybe not. I don't know.
I saw him at Bob's funeral. That's the last time I saw him. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had been able to attend that, especially, in light of his wife dying shortly after.
Yeah.
So, not, I'm a very big belief that funerals are only for living. I don't believe that Bob gave a shit if I went to his funeral or not, but I guess for his children and his wife, that would have been. I wish I had been able to be there. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's the guy who taught me to torrent. Sometimes I'm so fucking stupid. Like I know we have this shelf full of like Blu-rays and things like that, and I'm like, oh, I know I've got that movie over there. I'm just gonna download it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I like because I don't have like a DVD player hooked up anywhere. Like we have I mean, I guess the PlayStation 5 is a DVD player, but I don't want to like go and get the DVD and like put it in. And, like, I'll just download it. It's quicker. I can download a movie in like 5 minutes and then be watching it and not have to go over there and look through shit, put it in the player, all that. So I don't feel bad when I torrent a movie I've purchased.
I'm still a pretty big fan of collecting, I guess, physical media. I've definitely slowed down because, like, you know, some movies when they come out now, they're like $40. So it's like I much prefer to just go to like half price books and like pick out a bunch of old DVDs, horror movies.
I heard some guys arguing at a half price books about they were looking for some movie and it was 28 days later on Blu-ray. And apparently right after it came out, like the distributor like went out of business or something. Either way, I heard that it's a rare movie to have the original 28 days later on Blu-ray, which I have. That came out. That was one of the first Blu-ray movies I bought.
Oh yeah.
And it's got some weird spots in it where, like, I don't know if they forgot to switch it to HD, but it gets all like weird pixelated in a few scenes right at the end of the movie.
I remember seeing that one in the theater.
Yeah.
I know they shot it with like a camcorder or something like that at the time, which is like pretty innovative for back then.
Yeah.
But the new one looks good. The one that I think is coming out this year.
28 years later.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah. I'll check it out. I didn't. The second one wasn't as good as the first one. They should have just. I feel like they should have just left it alone.
Yeah.
But
some movies just don't really need a sequel.
That's the thing, right? Like, there are movies that do not need a sequel, but they're so fucking creatively shallow in Hollywood that they're just like, oh, let's just do a remake. Let's do a remake of this.
I read that Vampires has 2 sequels. I'm like, what? Why?
I didn't know that. Not done by John Carpenter, I guess, right?
I think he may have produced the second one, but not the third. Well, yeah, the second one has Bon Jovi in it. It's like I have no interest in watching that.
Oh.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Should have gotten Iggy Pop.
And then the third one is direct to video, I think. So.
Yeah, that checks out. Now everything should be direct. Now we bitch, right? We're like, oh, it didn't get a theatrical release, and now we're like, oh, why isn't it coming straight to streaming?
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to fucking go to a goddamn theater. I don't want to go sit in a fucking theater and watch a movie around a bunch of fucking gross ass people. Like, you sit at home and watch on your 82-inch TV where you're 3 feet away.
Yeah, no one to bother you. No one to. Yeah.
Just fucking chilling at your house. If you're like, oh, I need to go take a piss, you just pause the movie and go to your own bathroom, right? You don't have to go into a public restroom and all the fucking gross germs and humans walking around.
The past few times I went to the movies, like by myself, I usually go during the day. Like there's not that many people that go, I guess, to movies anymore. Or maybe it has to be like a big IP, like a Marvel movie or Jurassic Park. But anyways, it never fails. It'll be like an empty theater, but then the one person that also bought a ticket, like, picked a seat right next to me, like in the little checkout thing. It's like, go somewhere else. Like, I want my space.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Like, don't fucking sit next to me. The last movie I saw in theaters, I think, was It Part 1. We might have taken my son to see something since then, but I think that's the last one I remember going to a theater to watch it. The seats are nicer than they used to be.
Yeah, the seats are
way more comfortable.
I'll give them that.
But yeah, like, it's too little too late.
At home. Yeah.
Yeah, like especially with the cost. Like, give me a fucking break. The movie tickets aren't a crazy amount, but then like popcorn is a crazy fucking amount. Like
Yeah.
the markup on all that shit. I'm like, I got a popcorn maker at home.
Yeah. For two
Make the same
people, it's
fucking
like
popcorn.
$50 once you get like food and drinks.
Yeah, like I'll fucking sit at home and pirate your stupid fucking movie and eat popcorn that I paid $8 for fucking 5 pounds of corn kernels. Not that I pirate movies, but
No.
would never do that.
All right.
But go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, but it would be a good way to make sure that you didn't waste money on a shitty film. Like Nosferatu.
I had wanted to talk about that movie on the episode, but I don't know if I do anymore.
All right, it's so bad. We should talk about it because then we can just talk about. Should have a whole podcast where it's just talking about vampire movies that are better than that movie. It'd be a 5-hour podcast. We would just list almost every fucking every vampire movie ever, besides like Twilight.
Bram Stoker's Dracula, 30 Days, 30 Nights, I think is his name of
30 Days of Night. Yeah, that's
30 Days of Night. Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, like almost every vampire movie I've ever seen is better
Lost Boys. Yeah.
than Nosferatu. Yeah, like the original Nosferatu is better. Shadow of the Vampire is better. The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Dracula Dead and Loving It is.
I actually like that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, there's all of them. I was so disappointed by that movie. It was so overhyped, right? Fucking people talking about how great that goddamn movie is. Like, oh, we're so edgy. We gave Dracula a fucking mustache. Fuck you. Fuck everyone who fucking thinks that movie's great. They can all eat a dick.
I remember I put Dracula Dead and Loving It on one night, and Brittany's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, I love this movie."
It's fantastic, right? Yeah, how would you not like that movie? Yeah, all of every vampire movie almost. At one point,
I don't know. Those Lost Boys sequels are pretty terrible.
oh, those don't exist. Those never happened. I refuse to even acknowledge what you just said ever happened. The Lost Boys is a standalone film and it's a masterpiece.
And one day we need to talk about werewolf movies because there's some good ones and bad ones.
Yeah, but even the good ones are still like they almost make good werewolf movies, right? But then they drop the ball and like the werewolf is never as cool as it needs to be. They just do. Everyone does weird shit with werewolves. Like, why can't you just do a cool werewolf?
Was it American in London? American Werewolf in London. I like that one. Good. I actually like the one with Jack Nicholson, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh, Wolf, yeah. That was decent. And even Wolfman with Benicio del Toro.
Yeah.
Really, that was a really good one. But then for every like one good one, there's like 100 really terrible ones.
I haven't seen The Howling in a long time. Was that a good one?
No. I mean, it's not good. I've watched all the Howling movies. I love the Howling movies. They were great. Those were blockbuster popcorn Friday nights, right? Like no one checked out the Howling. You could always get it.
Yeah.
I think Howling 3 or 4 was called The Freaks, and then there was like a vampire versus werewolf because it was like a carnival or a circus. That was the first time I ever saw like a legit vampire fighting a werewolf on a fucking movie, and I was so excited. I know a lot of people hate the Underworld series.
I like them. Yeah, Brittany loves them.
Those were good. Like on both. I think the very last one was maybe not good, but like The Rise of the Lycans was fucking great. That was a great fucking movie. Like it could have been standalone. They didn't even have to put Underworld. They could have just made the movie Rise of the Lycans.
No, I like the style of those movies. You know, the soundtrack. You know, Kate Beckinsale and Latex. Yes.
The soundtrack was fantastic. I saw a picture of Kate Beckinsale the other day, and like, I don't know what the fuck happened. She got so much stuff done to her face, she didn't even look like the same person.
I see that a lot in like actresses. Like some people don't even look recognizable anymore. Like I think Renee Zellweger is like one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's cool. Whatever they want to do with their faces, but like, you're not gonna film any sequels with your face fucking that different. You fucking just change your entire appearance. But I mean, it's I guess whatever they want to do. They got to stay. Well, I guess in that industry, I'm not a fucking movie star, so you got to stay relevant. You got to stay young, right? Or you make yourself look like fucking Mickey Rourke, and then you get.
I think it was the boxing that did that to him.
No, I mean Mickey Rourke was not ever like a really bad looking guy until he started getting all that plastic surgery. And man,
but he had to get it because of the boxing damage, right? Because he was a boxer for a few years and got his face busted up.
But yeah, I mean, he got his face busted up a little, but not to where he needed to look like he didn't even look like a human anymore. He looks like an alien who's disguised himself as a human as best as they can.
Man, one day, I don't know if I'd want to talk about, but the wrestler though, that he was great in that movie. I guess he still kind of looked normal.
Yeah, the wrestler was good. I don't know, man. His whole thing was very odd, but
yeah,
that's whatever. But yeah, all those any movie we talked about is better than Nosferatu. It was just, I don't know. Like it wasn't awful, but if no one had ever said, "Hey, this is a great movie," if it wasn't advertised and promoted every 10 seconds on every social media platform and everything I try to fucking watch ever, then it wouldn't have bothered me.
they just kind of overhyped.
Oh my god, so much. And like all the people who are like influencers and all that bullshit, they're like fucking talking about it and showing clips of it, and they're like, "Oh my god, it's so good." Like, yeah, if you'd never seen a movie in your entire life, if you never watched a horror movie, cool, it's great, really good. But like, Gary Oldman's vampire is so much better than.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they're overusing that guy too. Fucking guy from It. They're just using him for his name at this point.
I just saw another trailer come out with Anthony Hopkins, and I guess Bill Skarsgård is locked in a cab. I'm like, man, where does he find the time to make all these movies? Like,
yeah,
I like him as an actor, but he needs to go away for like a couple years or something. Take a break,
or make something that doesn't fucking suck. I don't know. Like, he made the Crow remake. Between that and the fucking Nosferatu, like, I don't have any interest in seeing anything that guy does. I don't give a shit about him. Fuck that bug-eyed bitch. I mean, he's fine, but like, seriously, that Crow remake, fuck that. Fuck everyone who had any part of it. And fuck Nosferatu, because it's not good. If I had paid to watch that movie, I would have been pissed off. Like, legit. I would have been angry that I wasted money and went actually into a theater to be around people to watch that fucking garbage. Heaping pile of garbage.
I like the cinematography, but I mean, it's not that hard to pull off a good-looking movie these days. So that can't be the only thing going.
That much CGI. The whole fucking movie was like CGI.
Yeah. What were like the key things that like you really hated about it?
The mustache bothered me. That was stupid. It was just inconsistent. Like, it was supposed to be like this really dramatic love story, right? Like, he's infatuated with this girl to the point of where he is killing just to, crossing oceans and just slaughtering a path just to get to this lady. The fucking guy who played Hank McCoy in the X-Men movies. I mean, he's what, Keanu Reeves' character from the last one. He's just fucking annoying. The only character I liked in that movie was the little fucking crazy guy who got locked up and was eating rats and shit. His character was great.
Renfield, but I'm not sure what he's called in Nosferatu.
It was Renfield for sure. He was really good, almost as good as the guy from Dracula Dead and Loving It. But I don't know, like the movie, just the pacing was boring. The movie was boring. Like there was the character that he was at the beginning when he was like the decrepit old man was just not cool. I mean, the only cool thing was like the rats had chewed at his ears. So they were like, that was an interesting like view of him. He looked old and decrepit and like, I don't know, like the character design was decent. I understand why they put the mustache on him because Vlad Tepes had a mustache, but
yeah,
it looked fucking stupid. It looked like they reused the face from the movie Krampus. It looked like they took the face from Krampus and they're like, oh, we're just going to take the horns off and give you eyeballs. That's what it looked like to me.
He reminds me of the villain from the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. I haven't seen him, but I've seen pictures of Jim Carrey. It's like,
yeah,
I just can't take it seriously.
Dr. Robotnik. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And the ending was stupid. Like, why did she kill him? Why didn't she just leave with him? If she was that in love with him and like, oh, let's die together in the fucking sun. What fucking Romeo and Juliet bullshit. I don't want to see that. That's stupid.
I much more believe the romance in Bram Stoker's Dracula. For me, it's Gary Oldman is at the top, and then Christopher Lee's like right there. It's like best Draculas, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then Leslie Nielsen right below that.
Yes.
I would agree with that list. I mean, Leslie Nielsen might even be neck and neck with Lee, right? Like, he was pretty good.
One of the worst ones is that guy that was in Blade 3 that they brought in as Dracula.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I blocked that out. Right? So, like, Blade Trinity is still better. Blade Trinity is one level above Nosferatu as far as a vampire movie. Maybe a few levels higher. But Parker Posey as a vampire totally saved the whole movie. I would watch that movie 100 times over just to see Parker Posey. Insane fucking vampire character, right? Like, she's wacky in general, which is, I guess, what makes her attractive is because she seems like she's just off the rails, right? But her character in that was just, it was like her, but if she was an actual vampire. The weird shit she did and said was fucking really funny. But yeah, like that movie is really bad. I forgot all about that guy playing.
I've loved Blade 1 and 2. One day we'll like really dissect those movies, I guess.
Blade 2, I think, is fantastic. It's the best one of the series to me. Like Blade 2 was really good. The fight scenes, everything was really good.
Not enough Donnie Yen, but still good.
Yeah.
They didn't know who he was or what they had. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like that was almost just like Wesley Snipes going, hey, let's bring this guy in. You know, but yeah, he didn't have enough like cool fight scenes, right?
No.
It could have been like a time constraint too. It could have just been a, thing where they didn't have time to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah. Seriously, if you want to talk shit about Nosferatu, I know we're doing that right now, but I'll fucking talk shit about that movie for hours. I hate that movie.